What's going on, everyone? Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. I'm your host, Max Torres with ScoopDuck on 3, coming to you on Thursday, May 1st, 2025. We've got a brand new month ahead of us and hopefully some good news for Oregon on the recruiting trail. We got a bunch of big time targets coming off the board, making their decisions in the next couple of weeks here in the 2026 class. And we're still digesting and breaking down plenty of what we saw from Oregon's spring game over the weekend. And I got someone who was at the spring game on today's show, and that is none other than Zac Neel from USA Today's DucksWire. He's the managing editor over there, doing a fantastic job. And I'm glad to have him back on for another episode of the pod. Zac, how are you?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Been a little while since we got to chat. I mean, I know I always say what's up when I make it out there to Eugene. So it's fun to have you on and get to pick your brain a little bit about where this Oregon team is at as we got our first little glimpse, first little taste of the 2025 version of Dan Lanning's Ducks. It's been a little bit of a weird spring because media was not allowed to go to practices, so
Yeah.
all we had to go on were these pressers, and then obviously conversations with sources and whatnot behind the scenes. So I'm just gonna kind of toss this one up, big picture. You were at the spring game on Saturday, so I was living vicariously through you and some of the other folks in the Oregon media. Just kind of tell me a bit about what the atmosphere was like and how it felt to be back at Autzen.
Yeah, I mean, any Oregon spring game, I mean, it's a great time. Any game day atmosphere, whether it's spring or in the fall at Autzen, is just incredible. I think that Dan and the staff kind of deserve a lot of credit for still doing their spring game when a lot of, teams across the nation are opting out of it, but they understand how big of a deal it is for the community and also for recruiting. I mean, to get a lot of the guys out there this weekend and to kind of experience that Autzen atmosphere. I'm sure that went a long way in a lot of the recruitments that they had, a lot of the guys they had on campus. Yeah, overall this spring, I think it's been a very interesting spring. And I mean that like in a positive way because there's so much new about this team, so many newcomers, so many new faces in new roles that, they've been in Eugene for a couple of years, but they're finally being asked to produce, asked to step up and be those guys. Will they be as good as they were last year? I think they absolutely can be, but it's going to be a big thing to, see the development of them and see if they can actually step up and be those guys. So a lot of like, it feels like eager anticipation in Eugene when talking about this team because there's a lot of hope, but still a lot of unknown as well.
And I don't know where you stand on this, but I kind of find myself leaning into that unknown a little bit more and kind of siding with giving Lanning and the rest of the staff the benefit of the doubt because as someone who covers recruiting pretty heavily, like I know the caliber of guys that are in some of those meetings with the coaches and are going through the spring game and the drills on the day-to-day basis. So I think especially when you see the smaller haul that they got in the transfer portal, it really feels like this is kind of a put your money where your mouth is kind of a deal for a couple different positions this year with Oregon. I think obviously that starts with linebacker where Brian Michalowski was asked about just the prospects of a potential addition to the transfer portal. And he, long story short, said, no, I think I'm really good at developing the position. And we ask a lot of our guys. So it's something that I think lends itself to a little bit more of a long-term play. And then Dan Lanning kind of doubled down on that after the spring game with a guy like Jerry Mixon being highlighted. And there's a lot of really talented linebackers from that 2024 class. Braden Platt, Kamar Matudi, Dylan Williams was also flying around the field a little bit. So I think we'll talk more about like kind of specific positions, but I think that's probably the point that I'm the most excited about for next season. Any individual player aside is just like, okay, it's time for some of these young guys to finally get their shot.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to put it. I mean, it feels like this season more than ever before Dan Lanning and his staff are betting on themselves. They're like you said, kind of putting their money where their mouth is and saying, "Hey, we've got all of these incredibly highly rated commits over the past 2 years. Now, it's time for them to perform. It's time for us to show how we can develop these guys." And you look at the ceiling of this Oregon team this year and next year, it's like this is where they start to be, who Dan Lanning thinks and has always thought they could be, because he now has all of his guys. They're all guys that he's developed. You mentioned what he said after the spring game and what Coach B. Mike said about linebackers. Like, if I'm a linebacker in that room and I hear that, that fires me up so much, because he's putting his whole confidence in me. And that goes for anyone on the team. Like, he's saying, no, I like the guys we have. I don't need to go and get anyone else. I went and got these guys out of high school. I've developed them now. These are exactly the guys I want in my room and I want to have playing for me on Saturdays. So, it'll be really interesting to see how it all plays out. But I don't think Lanning has given us any reason to kind of doubt him over the past few years when he's confident about something and betting on himself. So I trust it. I mean, I'm excited to see how it plays out, but it's going to be interesting to see.
Another position that is always going to dominate the discussion coming out of spring football and coming out of a spring game is the quarterback position. And I think that we saw a lot of really encouraging stuff out there on Saturday. All of the quarterbacks in that room, almost all of them. I mean, all the scholarship quarterbacks got to get out there for a couple of drives. And we also saw former walk-on Brock Thomas also get some run, and he looked pretty good. But for a position where so much of the discussion, Zach, has just revolved around Dante Moore, former 5-star, a guy who was committed to Oregon coming out of high school at one point and then flipped to UCLA and found his way back to Eugene. Like, I feel like there's so much more in that room that we need to talk about, because I love Austin Novosad's poise and just confidence that he plays with. He's aggressive with the shots that he takes, looks pretty polished for a guy who really hasn't played a whole lot of in-game college snaps. And then Luke Moga might have been the guy who stole the show on Saturday with his evolution. You can just clearly see the growth from 24 to 25. Clearly has a great, what am I looking for? A great feel for his passing abilities, and has taken a step forward there after he was a guy that flashed with his legs last year. So I think that, Oregon really feels like they have one of the better quarterback rooms in the country, and the fact that Novosad is still there, I think is
crazy,
is such a blessing. I feel like, for the fan base, and I'm sure the coaching staff feels the same way.
Yeah, I think so as well. You mentioned Luke Moga. I mean, every year from the spring game, we at DucksWire, we just name our MVP of the game, like who stood out to us the most. Luke Moga won it this year because it was like, okay, he led some of the most impressive drives. I think he had some of the better throws on the day. I thought he was really, really talented. We talk about the quarterbacks as between Dante and Austin, and I think those two are the top two on the depth chart. My money would be on Dante Moore to win it outright. I know that I'm not alone in that thinking, but I think Luke is much closer to that top two than we previously thought, and that's what I saw in the spring game. But going down the line too, I was also very impressed with Achilles Smith Jr. I thought that, when you put a true freshman in there in a spring game and ask him to operate the offense for a few drives, I'm not looking for his mastery of the offense. I'm not looking for him to, play perfect football and lead scoring drives. I want to see flashes. I just want to see talent. And I really saw that from him. There was a few times where he stepped up in the pocket, evaded some pressure, slid around, and then just made some really good throws, specifically to Vander Plug, another true freshman. But he's got some really good arm talent, got some zip on the ball. I'm excited. I think that there's just so much talent in that room. But then you come to the conversation, how many of these guys are actually going to play at Oregon in the future? Because, I think you got Dante Moore this year, probably next year as well. After that, it's open. Do you have Jared Curtis? Is it Novosad? Is it Achille? I mean, there's such an abundance of talent there that it's interesting that, I don't know how much we'll see of any of these guys in an Oregon uniform, but what we have seen has been very fun so far.
Well, I like that you mentioned Jared Curtis, because he's, of course, one of those decisions that we're anxiously awaiting here in 4 days now, Zach. We know that Will Stein and the Oregon staff have plans to go in home with him out there in Nashville. But with the abundance of talent that this Oregon quarterback room has, I don't know. Is it too much to say that this is the most stability that we've seen at the quarterback position in quite a while? I mean, last year you obviously had Dylan Gabriel. He was a Heisman finalist. I thought Dante Moore gave Oregon their most proven or ready backup that they've had, and I don't know how long. Just taking what he did at UCLA with a grain of salt wasn't great, but it was still college experience, and Oregon hadn't really had a backup with actual college experience in a while. So I'm kind of trying to digest that and kind of compare it with how much weight we're giving Austin Novosad's reps, because he really still hasn't seen that much game time.
Yeah, I think that's a fair question, and it's hard not to answer that with a massive amount of recency bias, because I'm not gonna lie, I don't remember the backup quarterback rooms from 2010 or 2005. Like, I remember the starters and they were great, but I can't go down the list of how deep they were. I know that Oregon feels very confident in whoever their quarterback is going to be this year. I'm sure you've talked to people behind the scenes as well. They think they can win a lot of games, whether it's Dante Moore, Austin Novosad, or Luke Moga. They think they can compete for a Big Ten title again. So I think that, yeah, if you're going to stack up their quarterback room against anyone else's in the nation, they're among the top of that list. I don't think you can go very far down the list to find other QB rooms who are as stacked as they are. I've said a lot over the past few weeks. I think Austin Novosad, if he doesn't win the starting job at Oregon, could probably start at 80 to 100 other schools in the nation, like instantly just be their starter if he were to enter the transfer portal. And Oregon is fortunate to have him around. They're lucky to have someone who loves the Ducks so much that he wants to stick it out and, compete for that starting spot, which in today's day and age of college football is more and more rare. But yeah, from top to bottom, I don't think you could feel much better about this Ducks quarterback room.
And further aiding the confidence in Oregon's quarterback room, I think, is how the schedule shakes out for Oregon. You're not being presented with some murderer's row of heavy hitters that you have to face in the Big Ten. You start things off with Montana State, who I don't think a lot of people necessarily even know a whole lot about, but it's a home game as well. So I don't think you could ask for a better transition from Dylan Gabriel to Dante Moore, who a lot of us expect to be the incumbent starter there in Eugene. I want to roll along and hit on another position group, maybe a couple of them. I think one of the groups, maybe let's go to defense because we just spent some time talking on offense. So we'll go back and forth a bit. One of the groups that I think is the biggest question mark on this team is the secondary. And it's a situation where you lose all of your starters from last year. So it's a completely clean slate. I'm sure if you asked Chris Hampton or Rashad Wadood how they would draw it up, they maybe wouldn't have asked for that. But I mean, you have a lot of really good players in that room. Some of them shined in the spring game. Obviously, Ife Obadegu had one of the highlights with his forced fumble that Blake Purchase scooped and scored after it popped out. And then you had some of your true freshmen that almost, I mean, in college football terms, literally just got there as early enrollees in Trey McNutt and Naeem Offord with some pass breakups and flashing their ability. So I don't want to take too much from the spring game and have all that recency biased, but for all the hype and excitement from the offseason, like that's all we really have to go on right now, Zach. So for those guys, I mean, even if they didn't make plays, I think being in the right spot and minimizing your lapses in coverage is an incredibly encouraging sign. So I really like from what we saw from that group.
Yeah, I think so as well. And that's just like there's so many positions on the offense you can say this about. The fact that there is, or on the roster you can say this about, excuse me, the fact that there is such a clean slate right now is what makes this spring so exciting, because there are so many things to talk about. The secondary is absolutely one of them. I mean, if you mention just the quarterbacks alone, I mean, we're super excited to see what Sione can do. I want to see what Julio Florence can do coming back from injury. I personally thought it was hilarious that he was in a red do not contact jersey and he was out there making tackles on the spring game. It's like, okay, I'm sure he might have gotten talked to by the coaches a little bit, but and then yeah, Ife is someone who has just been getting rave reviews from coaches and players all spring. I can't wait to see what he can do. One guy that really impressed me a ton in the spring game that we didn't talk about much this spring was Aaron Flowers. I think I've got the stats right here. he led the entire team in tackles with 8 tackles on the day. He was getting in there, run stopping out of that safety position. I know we're really excited to see what Kingston Lopa and Peyton Woodard can do. And then obviously this is all not to mention Dylan Thieneman, who is projected to be maybe one of the best safeties in the nation this year. So again, there's so much talent there. It's just going to be about finding who fits in the right spots and who can step up when it's actual games being played. And as you mentioned earlier, the schedule allows for that, because just like last year, you kind of get a nice lead up into the season. You're not facing Georgia week 1. You've got a few weeks where you can, if the offensive line isn't gelling perfectly, you can figure it out over a couple of games before you go to Penn State. If the secondary is, you need to move guys around, you've got a little bit of time to figure that out. So it does set up really nicely. I think they can kind of ease into things and find where places need to fit.
And the Ducks didn't lose a lot of pieces from the current roster. Obviously, you had the NFL departures or the exhausting eligibility guys, right? But Roderick Pleasant was probably the big guy that you look at losing, who's since transferred to UCLA, reuniting with Demetrius Martin, who's out there in Westwood with the Bruins. But the Ducks did hang on to, or they still have, I should say, another Gardena Sarah standout in Dakota Fields in that cornerback room. And I mean, I don't know if it's Southern California bias, because like I covered him a lot in high school, but like he wasn't medically cleared, so we didn't see him play in the spring game. But I really still feel like he's someone that could potentially play a role here. 6'2", 190, 95 pounds. Like, that's the thing I'm most excited about with this secondary, Zach, is that you didn't see any guys from last year's secondary, I don't think, get drafted. I think they were all undrafted free agent signings. So I'm not trying to take a shot at them, but I think that's, the NFL draft is the ultimate evaluator of, where your guys are at and where your position's at. And now with this clean slate, we're having our first look, I think, at a secondary that is really built nearly from top to bottom on the prototypical guys that Lanning, Hampton, Wadood want at the positions. Like, you have cornerbacks with length. You have a really experienced safety in Dylan Thieneman, who's going to play a big role. Kingston Lopa, who's been raved about constantly since he got to Oregon as this freak athlete. So, like, I think that we could really see Oregon take a leap. Maybe it's not a massive leap this year, but like, I think they are, if you're looking at positions that maybe they've come up a little short with in the past couple of years, and is maybe preventing them from taking that next big step as a program, I think you'd be a little ignorant if you didn't say the secondary had something to do with it. Not that they're terrible. It's not what I'm saying. Just in terms of really maximizing this evolution and taking that next step to be able to win the college football playoff game, or just really make a statement that you have dudes in the secondary. So I think this is a great situation for them to be in.
Yeah, Dan Lanning has talked all the time about, the ability to adapt and adapting to your future and just how you can be the best going forward. I think that the secondary, to your point, is the position that has adapted the most under this coaching staff, because, no longer are we seeing like 5'9", 5'10", 5'11" cornerbacks out there who are good in coverage and maybe quick. They kind of got exposed a little bit last year. We saw the Rose Bowl against Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Egbuka. We saw them against bigger receivers. They couldn't hold up as well. So now you look at the secondary, the cornerback room. You got 6'1", 6'2", 6'3", 6'4" guys in Sione Lulu. Kingston Lopa, I think, is 6'5". Like, there's some really big guys out there that they may not be as twitchy and as fast and fluid as a Jabbar Muhammad, who is an incredible player. I was honestly surprised he didn't get drafted, but there's someone who can go up and contest at the catch point with these bigger receivers that we're seeing in today's game. It's just about how quickly they're going to be ready. You talked a little bit earlier about the true freshmen, Naeem and Dorian and Brandon and Finney. I think they looked really good in the spring game. I take everything in the spring game with a grain of salt, because how similar is that to a real game day environment? I don't know. I had Joey Harrington on the podcast this week, and he was saying, I hate the spring game. Like, you don't learn anything from it. You just got to get out of there without injuries. So I think there's a big part of that, but it's okay to be excited about some of these guys because they do show flashes. And when you're a true freshman that's been on campus for 2 months, that's all I want to see. And that's what we got on Saturday.
Max Torres with ScoopDuck on 3 here with you on a Thursday. Thank you guys so much for being here for another episode of the Ducks Dish Pod, joined by my friend Zac Neel over at DucksWire here. Just a quick reminder, if you guys like what you're hearing, make sure you check us out at ScoopDuck. Come and see us at ScoopDuck.com. You can try us out for a whole week for just $1. You had the big news with the Rivals integration yesterday, so I think big things are coming for On3, and we want you to be a part of it. So just had to throw that one in there here as we roll along on a Thursday. Zac, one more group I want to talk about. Maybe we'll squeeze in 2 if we can. Let's hop back to the offense, because I think the offensive line has been a major strength for Oregon in recent years. I'm sure you see it all the time on social media. There's this ongoing debate about development versus transfers. And there's no other way to put it other than that Oregon needed some offensive line reinforcements after this last season. A group that Alik Terry developed into a Joe Moore Award finalist. But your only returning starter is Poncho Laululu, man in the middle there at center. Matthew Bedford's back for another year, which is huge after he looked like he was going to be a big factor last year, but was just banged up and wasn't able to put it together. Dave Iuli is also back. Iuli, I covered him in high school, and I still don't know if I'm saying his name right, which is
I'm still not confident in it either. I think it's Iuli, Iuli. I don't know.
I think it's Iuli too. Maybe I just need to. I don't know. Someone's got to.
We'll figure it out.
We need to have a meeting as Oregon media and be like, all right, guys, before the season, how are we saying these names?
It's just how we say it.
But and you also have Kavika Rogers, who's back, and he saw some action last year. So I don't know. I'm super interested to see this offensive line because, I mean, to Joey's point, like, you don't learn anything about the offensive line in the spring game. Maybe the defensive line, I think you can, but we know the matchups, the groups are all mixed up, mixed and matched. But you got a guy like Emmanuel Pregnon who comes in from USC, Alex Harkey from Texas State, Big Isaiah World from Nevada. I'm confident that this is going to be another really good group. But the bigger question that I want to get at with you is just, I don't know where you kind of stand on this ongoing debate of bringing in transfers versus developing guys as it pertains to the offensive line, because there were some bumps in the road last year with a lot of new guys on that line. But I think this is another great group, and I still think Alik Terry is one of the best in the business.
Yeah, just to start on the offensive line first, I think that this could be among the most talented offensive lines that Oregon has had in a long time. I mean, Isaiah World you look at a lot of the 2026 mock drafts that are coming out this week, like he's going first round. I saw one from ESPN today that had him number 6 next year. Like, he's going to be probably a first round left tackle. Pregnon is a really good player. Alex Harkey, much bigger than I kind of thought he was. I know I've read his size before. When you see him in person, it's like, okay, that guy's really big. And then we know what Poncho can do. We know that Bedford can be a really good player when he's healthy, or Iuli if he's healthy, and whoever wins that starting job. I think it's just going to be about, the talent is there. It's going to be about mixing and matching and finding out where these guys slot in. And, we have no reason not to trust Alik Terry in figuring that out, because he's proven time and again that that's what he's good at, is mixing and matching and finding those spots. When it comes to the whole transfer portal and development debate, I think it's a really fun debate. I've seen it a lot on social media. We talked about it on our podcast this week, because your answer is kind of directly tied to what your opinion of Oregon is. I mean, we know what USC and Washington fans are going to say. They're like, oh, you had Dylan Gabriel for a year, and then he went to the 3rd round in the draft. You didn't develop him. You just kind of got him for a year. Was Dylan Gabriel going to be a 3rd round draft pick out of Oklahoma? I don't think so. Does that mean that Oregon deserves all the credit for making him that? No, he would have developed a little bit on his own, but it's less about development these days, and it's more about, I think, providing a platform for these kids to come in and get everything they need, all of the access to the tools. The health, the learning, just the weight room is such a big part of it. So, development I think comes more for the kids that come in as true freshmen and spend 3-4 years here. That's who you develop. But the other guys, if they come in for a year or two and then they leap up the draft board, maybe you didn't develop them from a high school prospect into an NFL player, but you certainly helped elevate them. You gave them a springboard. And I don't think that should be looked down upon at all. You're still doing a great job to help these kids achieve their dreams, and you're showing that Oregon can be a spot where someone like Jordan Birch, who flamed out early in his career as a 5-star, can come elevate and get into the league.
Oh,
So
Nix.
Bo Nix, a perfect example. He was not going to be a first-round draft pick out of Auburn, and then he came to Oregon for 2 years and he went in the first round. So, yeah, I think I believe 6 of Oregon's 10 draft picks this year were transfers, either 1 or 2-year transfers. I think that's a great thing that Oregon can hang their hat on, because they also had 4 guys that were part of Oregon's program for 4 years that got drafted as well. You can do both. It's not a one thing or another. I think that they're doing a really good job of both things.
I think that it's like a bit of a case-by-case basis, right? Because I think you look at it differently if it's a guy that comes over for a year and you helped improve his draft stock versus a Jordan Birch or Bo Nix, someone that you had multiple years with. And I don't think that Birch was necessarily, I don't want to say as badly off or poorly off as Nix was, but like
Yeah.
Bo Nix was like resurrected, it feels like, when he went to Oregon, versus Birch, it was like you always saw it, but like for whatever reason it just wasn't getting put
The
together.
potential was there. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think you look at it differently, and Oregon's still they're going to have the best of both. I think you're going to have a guy like Poncho, who's you got out of high school and has been developing really well, and then you're going to have some transfers that you bring in there to help shore the gaps, because I think that Oregon could win some games if they weren't able to lean on the portal. But like you don't want to put yourself in that position. The portal's there. It's a tool. We can use it to get better, is probably what the staff is saying. So why not go and use it? So I think you're going to have that blend across the board, and that's one of the groups that I'm most excited about. I'm hearing a tremendous amount of buzz about the O-line, and that it could be one of the best since Lanning's got there, which is wild to say.
Well, and to the development and the portal point as well, before we get off that, I would not be surprised if this starts trending towards more of the long 3-year development in the future. Because now, once Lanning kind of had to use the portal early on to get guys that he wanted to play, because maybe the recruits that came under Mario Cristobal, nothing bad against them, but they just didn't fit as well in Lanning's scheme. So he had to go find guys that fit. He used them and put them into the draft. So now I think that he's getting these recruits out of high school that are his guys. That's what we're going to see this year. This linebacking core are his guys. We may not know that they're great yet. He knows they're great. He thinks they're great. So yeah, when a few of them go to the NFL in a couple of years, we'll be able to say that, yeah, he developed them from high school and made them his guys. I don't think he'll have to dip into the transfer portal quite as much in the future. You don't see Georgia or Alabama. Well, I'll stay with Georgia for now, just because Lanning has the history there, taking so many transfers and then sending them to the league. Most of the guys they send to the league were developed at Georgia and spent 3-4 years there. So I think that's kind of the model we're getting to at Oregon, but it's just going to take time, because you gotta build recruiting classes. You got to stack these on top of each other, and then you'll have the hits.
One more position that I want to talk about here, Zach, before we get to a little bit of recruiting to kind of ride us off into the sunset. We always have known, I mean, as long as I've been following the Ducks, I don't think this is going to change anytime soon. Oregon will never be lacking talent at the running back spot. It's always an embarrassment of riches. I mean, it's absolutely insane, the caliber of backs that they've had there. Not all of them have gone on to have like tremendous NFL careers. So I think that's certainly a point we have to acknowledge. But Jordan James did get drafted by my 49ers. So I'm fired up about that without a doubt. The thing I want to talk about with the running back, Zach, I don't know if this rotation is as clear cut as we maybe thought it was going to be. I think it's probably safe to say that Mekhi Hughes and Noah Whittington are your 1A, 1B. We'll see how those roles kind of shake out. But behind them, that number 3 spot seems like it's kind of up for grabs. And not every guy can. I think every guy probably has somewhat of an argument to make, right? Dink Riggs played very limited snaps in 2024, but he's looked promising and has been someone that the staff has raved about all throughout the offseason. Jayden Limar, I'll be completely honest, I didn't really think he was going to still be here when we got to the spring. A really talented back that could do a little bit of everything out of Washington. Like, I think that's another thing we have to talk about here. Like with Oregon maybe not having the splashiest portal haul this offseason, is the guys that they were able to retain. I think that was a tremendous win for them, and it's just a testament to the culture that they have in Eugene and how bought in these guys are. And then you also have Jay Harris, who was pretty unknown coming over from Northwest Missouri State of all places. But what kind of a leap can he make from his first year to his second year with the Ducks? I don't know if that number 3 spot is set in stone or very clear right now.
Yeah, I think I agree with you that the 1A and 1B or 1-2, however you want to look at it, that's Mekhi Hughes and Noah Whittington in some form. I believe it'd be Mekhi Hughes because the tape that we've seen, just what he's put out on the field before, whether it's, I know it's at a lower level of football as a Power 5 school, or a non-Power 4 school, I should say. I still think he's just built for this type of game. He's an electric player with the ball in his hands. I agree. I am in the exact same boat. Like, I talked to Jonathan Stewart, my co-host, earlier this week. Like, hand up, we did not talk about Jayden Limar enough this spring. Like, he impressed me so much in the spring game. Again, I'll say it again, spring assault. He looked really good with the ball in his hands, and it's kind of like, oh yeah, I forgot about him. He is a very talented player, a former high-end 4-star recruit. So we kind of get enamored with the guys who's gonna be next. Last year it was Jay Harris, who we thought, hand up again. I thought he was going to be much better than he ended up being. He just didn't get too much of an opportunity. I know some of that was learning the playbook and just kind of getting used to this level of play because he is a former D2 guy. This year we thought it was Dink Riggs, and that's not to say he's not going to be that, but he's who we spent most of our time talking about because you hear what former players are saying, calling him Bucky 2.0, saying that he's like Jonathan Stewart said he has got a little LaMichael James, Kenyon Barner to him. Like, that's the style of runner he is. You hear that, and it's like, okay, I want to talk about that guy. That makes us forget about Jayden Limar. And, I personally apologize to Jayden Limar for not talking about him enough because he is a really solid player. I think he can have a big role in this offense. But to your main point, there are so many guys. I mean, it's kind of like the quarterback room. I think they can go with any of these guys and feel very confident about their running game. You put them behind an offensive line as good as Oregon's can be, should be. I think you've got a really explosive running game.
Right now, if I had to guess that number 3 back, I would probably lean Dink Riggs. But I don't know. I think if you look at what the Ducks did with Jordan James early on in his career, he was kind of that third down goal line back, and then he ended up becoming the starter when Bucky went off to the NFL, and then obviously Noah had his injury that he dealt with. So it's going to be fun to see what Rashad Samples does with that room. It's very much a situation of there's only one ball to go around, but I think it'll help Oregon just keep fresh legs in there, which is another huge asset. So it's going to be fun to see how that running back room shakes out between now and game 1.
Well, I believe it was the first 2 years. I may be a little bit off on that, but we saw more of an RB split between Bucky and Noah. Like, they were splitting, no one had over 20 carries per game. It was a lot of 12 carries and 11 carries for the other guy. Last year, and we went into more of the bell cow era with Jordan James, where he had some games with over 20 carries. He was getting the rock a lot. I feel like this year it could go back to that previous generation where it's, Mekhi may have 12 carries and Noah may have 10 and Dink may have 8 and Jayden may have 6. Like, you're really getting a lot of different guys because you have a bunch of talent. They want to keep fresh legs. These guys, they're about the team. They don't care about their own stats. They want to win in the end. So if that means taking a little bit of a lesser role but producing more, I think that's what they're about.
Let's wrap up the show with a little bit of recruiting talk here, Zach. I can never get enough recruiting. I'm sure that Oregon fans recruiting is maybe making them pull their hair out a little bit right now with some of the flips that we've seen in this cycle. But got another opportunity for some positive news for the green and yellow this upcoming weekend. We're talking about 2026 four-star modern day wide receiver Kayden Dixon-Wyatt, who's down to a final five of Oregon, USC, Texas, Ohio State, and Alabama, set to make his decision on Sunday, May the 4th. And man, this is one that Oregon has just been involved in for so long, Zach. They're I guess I would say they're in need of a recruiting win, but I also think it's all got to kind of not be taken with a grain of salt, but like you just got to keep the whole timeline of the 2026 class and the recruiting calendar in mind here. Oregon's basically coming out of the spring here. Official visits are starting earlier every year, it feels like, but June's going to be huge for the Ducks. And then you have the early signing period in December, and that's when like the best NIL offers are usually made. That's when the Ducks are pushing their hardest. Like that's just what history tells us. But after missing out on Chris Henry Jr., who was always a long shot, he's locked in with the Buckeyes. But Tom flips to USC, and then Cody Green flips to Washington. Like, God, the Ducks would love to get back into the mix here with a commitment from Kayden Dixon-Wyatt.
Yeah, and I think it starts with Kayden, and then you've got a chance for a couple of big guys to come off the board and really get the ball rolling with Jared Curtis and then Jackson Cantwell committing later in May as well. So, like you said, I mean, I take a step back in recruiting and stuff and leave that to you and guys at ScoopDuck and 247. You guys are more plugged in than I am. I kind of look at it from afar, but yeah, I see the fan frustration over the past couple of months with some of the flips, and I understand it, but you made a good point that, yeah, look at where we are on the calendar. It's, it's been April, it's May. If you get these guys now, that doesn't mean you have them. Like you still have to keep committing or recruiting them over the next several months till we get to December. And if you don't get these guys now, that doesn't mean you don't have them forever. You keep recruiting them, you try and flip them. I mean, look at Elijah Rushing a couple of years ago. You didn't get him in the summer, but you kept after him. You finally got him in the fall and the winter. So yeah, it does feel like the Ducks need a little bit of good news. I'm sure they would like some, but I also know that that's more of a fan driven narrative than what the coaching staff thinks, because they're going about their business. They're trying to do what they can. They would love some commitments, but they know that momentum is not something that they're worried about. They know that that's more of a fan thing. They're just trying to get these guys.
Oregon has 7 verbal commits in 2026. Will they make it 8 this weekend? One more note I'll pass along with Kayden Dixon-Wyatt. I spoke about it on our message boards yesterday for our ScoopDuck subscribers. Oregon and their coaches visited Mater Dei yesterday, and they had a large contingent, which included Ross Douglas, was there to obviously see Kayden Dixon-Wyatt, and then they got some other guys they're going after there with Cody Green. I mean, maybe they try to get him back on board later on, but I think that is significant here because Oregon visited Mater Dei on Wednesday. Kayden Dixon-Wyatt says he's going to make his announcement on Sunday. That was a guy that I thought was going to take all his official visits, Zach, and then make his decision. But I think with the way that the calendar is lining up, I feel like there has to be some intention there with the way that Oregon would love this to shake out. So I still haven't made my pick yet for Kayden Dixon-Wyatt. I'm running out of time, but I'm working the phones and trying to see what the pulse is telling me. My gut says Oregon, but God, it's really hard to say that they're going to get him over probably Ohio State. I think is that number 2. Just probably the safest destination for a receiver if you're looking to get developed. But Brian Hartline's role might look a little different this year. Now that he's the offensive coordinator, maybe he's not as hands-on with the wideouts. There's just so many factors that I think go into this. And I know a lot of Oregon fans would probably feel a little bit better if Junior Adams was still in Eugene, fellow Bay Area native like Kayden Dixon-Wyatt. But I know Ross Douglas has done a tremendous job attacking this recruitment, and he's doing everything he can.
Question for you. Didn't Kayden just announce, was it yesterday that he announced his commitment date? Did that happen after Oregon went down there? Had he done that and then Oregon went down? Just how does that play into this thing for you?
Yeah, I mean that's the thing that I'm pondering right now. Like I don't know what time they were there.
Okay.
I know that they had practice in the morning. And maybe they came by during that. So, I mean, I'm trying to figure out those details, and maybe we're reading too much into like that one single thing. Like that's what makes recruiting so hard, is as imperfect a science as you will find, and it's only getting cloudier with NIL. But I still think Oregon's got a great shot. I mean, I'm feeling better about their chances for Kayden than with Cantwell and Curtis at the moment. But recruiting's fluid, and we'll just have to see how it unfolds.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that's why I take a step back and let you guys do it. It's too much. I'll just stick with practice and games and talking to coaches and players who are on the team.
There you go. Yeah, I know recruiting's not for everybody, but I love it. And it really feels like it's like investigative journalism, like at its finest. And I never really thought about it that way because it was so fun. And now it's kind of getting more stressful over these past couple of cycles.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I love following it. I'm just not gonna try my hand at wading into the waters and making predictions and all. It's just like there's so many opportunities to be wrong. That's what it is for me.
For sure. Well,
I don't need more of those. I don't need more opportunity to be wrong.
That's fair. Well, Zac, before we get you out of here, man, I just wanted to give you a chance, let people know where they can find you and kind of what the latest is in your world.
Yeah, you mentioned my stuff at USA Today, DucksWire.usatoday.com, following the Ducks here. And then I've got my podcast with former Oregon legend Jonathan Stewart, the Believe in Oregon podcast. We had a lot of fun getting a lot of guests on. We had Jeff Schwartz on a couple weeks ago, Joey Harrington on to break down the spring game this past week. Get into the off season now, so I'm sure that we'll have to get creative with some of the stuff we talk about. But that tends to be when we have the most fun and kind of go off the rails a little bit. So check out our podcast. We have a lot of fun. But again, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, Zac. Great chatting with you. Make sure you guys tap in with Zac if you haven't already. We got a lot of awesome reporters here in the Oregon market, and Zac does a terrific job. So if you want to find more of me, you can find me anywhere at Torres Sports. Subscribe to the ScoopDuck On 3 YouTube channel. We're trying to continue growing this community. You already know you can find me at ScoopDuck.com. And do me a favor, share the Ducks Dish podcast with another Duck fan, and have yourself a heck of a day. But until next time, thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Dish podcast.